Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Pittsburgh Current podcast. I am Pittsburgh Current editor and publisher Charlie Deach. I wanted to thank everyone. First off, let's start by thanking everyone who came out to Local Bar and Kitchen on Tuesday night for our election watch party, along with our friends at the Incline, and as well as WTF, Women for the Future of Pittsburgh. Everyone came out. We had a packed room. We did a live podcast, which you should be able to download or watch on our site. That's all up there for you. It was fun. It was at least my first live on the scene podcast. But it was fun. It was a good night, and we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about some election results. We're going to talk about beer. We're going to talk about who the hell knows, because my guest today is Dave Bracey. He is the host of the Drinking Partners podcast. He is a gifted, I heard in the men's room at the at Hambo's. They said gifted stand-up comic. Wait, yeah, we're gonna have to redo that one. I'm just kidding. He was gifted on stage. I just happened to overhear that at the men's room. Every time I try and do something, it just always ends in failure. But he's also the craft beer writer for the Pittsburgh Current. You can catch him every issue in our food and drink section. Dave Bracey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, man.
No, it's my pleasure. And I didn't mean to start that bathroom rumor. It's really my fault.
I mean, I am gifted in the bathroom. I mean, I'm not gonna shy away from my prowess. Shout out to my daddy, but
yeah, that's what if you got it, just be proud. Just be proud. So let's talk. We were talking before we came on the air. We're talking politics. What did you? Where did you spend Tuesday? Were you hunkered down somewhere watching results?
I was in my living room with my ass puckered the whole night, just watching the results and whatnot. Just kind of, I just got off work, and I mean, I don't know. It was there were a lot of things going on in the city, and I don't eat a lot of fiber, so that's catching up to me. Old age is a thing. Metamucil apparently is a cure for that.
Yeah, it'll knock it right out of you.
Yeah, so that's what I'm hoping to add that to my diet or whatever. But I mean, I feel like America needs to do the same thing and get some of these shitbags out of office. And I don't know. I don't think they're doing enough. I mean, shout out to the House. We got that or whatever.
Yeah.
So we can play this game of standstill for the next 2 years. But I don't know, man. It seemed like overall America was kind of like split, and it's when you spend 2 years of having this orange like jizz trumpet in office, like spouting all the rhetoric that he has, and the America's answer to that is I don't know. It's not hopeful.
Yeah.
It wasn't it wasn't the blue wave. It was the blue wave. We won all these seats, and it's but we lost the Senate seat. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the general election, that's the shit that's really gonna.
And that's the thing is when Republicans came out. One stat I learned the other night was that fewer Republicans voted straight ticket this time, which is, I guess, hopeful. But they came out for they wanted to make sure that the Supreme Court is stacked for however long with conservative justices. And they almost sobbed this morning because the news, I don't know if some of you have heard, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg took a fall, broke 3 ribs. And, she's been doing her best to hold on for us, but...
Man, if she needs my ribs, she can have them. I am not doing a goddamn thing for her. I mean, I can keep drinking and with 3 less ribs. So if she needs them, I got them. But they don't care. They don't care about anyone outside of themselves. I was talking to a friend, and she was saying my friends are socially liberal but physically conservative, and I'm like, well, that just means that you don't give a fuck about anybody else's rights other than your own, and it's easy to be socially liberal when you're white, because who's going to stop you? The cops aren't, the system isn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have these advantages or whatever, so of course you can vote for these folks that are let's ban the gays and the immigrants and demonize all of these other people and be but he's not demonizing me. me in particular. Right. So yeah, sure, I'll vote for him. Like,
yeah, I mean, but to be honest, I'm getting a little tired of, people. You don't know what it's like to be a white man in America Day. I mean, it's a it's hard work. I'm just kidding. It's obviously I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hashtag jizz trumpet, by the way. Let's get that into a thing. But no, it is. It's true. It is easier to stand up for, what you believe in when people are already giving you a pass. You know what I mean? They're not already scrutinizing every single thing you do. And so you could get away with that. It's easy to do. And
I mean, I look at it the same. I mean, intersectionality matters, man. I look at it the same way. Like as a man, like I'm provided a great many privileges in life as a result of being a man, as a result of being a natural born citizen in this country, as a result of being an American, as opposed to a citizen in various other countries. Like I acknowledge my privilege. You know what I mean, like so and that's a hard thing to do because like when I look around as a black man in America, like. I'm poor as shit. I'm a poor black man in America. I look around, I'm like, what fucking advantages? That's what it like for years when people were like, oh, you're privileged. Women were telling me, oh, you're privileged. I'm like, what the fuck you mean? Like I get pulled over every other day. Yeah. I mean, like, it's tough to see those privileges, but you can either focus on all of the bad that's going on, or you can focus on some of the advantages that you do have and realize that like if the thing is that all issues are your issues. So if you don't acknowledge your privileges or whatever, eventually you will lose them because like these people that don't have them, like the people that are the highest up are looking to take away from everybody. Like, I mean, honestly, like only rich, straight Christian white males are are at the top of this pyramid or whatever. Everybody outside of that will lose. Like you as a white dude, like you're not rich enough to be like privileged, like in the sense that like they're never going to come for you and knock on your door. You know what I mean? Like you don't have enough of a financial buffer for that. You know what I mean? So like when they take away these like these privileges of gays and women and blacks or whatever, like that police accountability like issue that Black Lives Matter is fighting for or whatever, that they're going to knock on your door at some point. You know what I mean? Like that's what happened with the drug wars with Reagan. You know what I mean? Like he demonized black folks and crack and like the welfare moms and like all of this shit. Now you see like all these poor white people that are trying to get by and like the cops are knocking on the door. There's that seizure those seizure laws or whatever like in Michigan where they're knocking on the doors of these people that are selling legal weed. They're finding these bullshit like little loopholes and then they're taking all of their shit. These are white folks. You know what I mean? Like these are white middle class people that are trying to get by on a legal system, but they're coming back and because they're using archaic laws that were passed in the 80s. So if you allow that shit to happen, like it was only black folks back then. Oh, it's just the crackheads. Like, I mean, that's cool. Let me give up these liberties. You're just gonna, just the crackheads. Now here we are in 2018, and they're at your door. Yeah, and it's. I think that for me personally, it's. Again, I certainly, as a white male in America, there are a lot of things in my favor. However, I never expected as a journalist for anyone to come and tell me that I couldn't write about a scumbag elected official, or to edit you run a sex column, but let's edit all the sex out of the sex column. These are the kind of things. And then, when you stand up, they cut you loose. And so that's one thing. And so it's like, well, I can get over that. And as soon as you start giving up your liberties, it's one right after another, like dominoes. Yeah. I was going to ask, because you just brought up, I heard that you mentioned about being stopped by police. I heard you were recently stopped in Beaver County. Yeah. Was that like a Mississippi burning moment down there in Beaver County? You can ask me that question on any given day, and the answer is like, yeah, I was recently stopped by. Like, I've been living in Beaver for 5 years now, and I've been pulled over. I mean, nearly every other month since I've been up there. The first 2 years, it took me a little while to change my address on my driver's license or whatever. But like, the first 2 years, I was getting pulled over like once a month. I got pulled over 17 times the first like 2 years that I was over
Holy
there or
cow.
whatever. Tinted windows. I got pulled over 4 times for tinted windows. I mean, I did a California roll through a stop sign at like right in front of my place.
Yeah.
Like I turned the corner, coming off from work. I turned the corner or whatever. I saw the sheriff make a U-turn and like in the street and then like pull up behind me. I get out of the car because like I'm in front of my house. Like it is literally half a block away. And he's like, get back in the car. Like, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and you know, he writes me a ticket. Like I get back in the car and he writes me a ticket for, you know, like rolling through the stop sign or whatever. Like it was, you know, this ambiguous. Like, oh, you know, that light was really red, not yellow.
Yeah.
And like just a little, and like this last time, I got pulled over and I was merging onto a highway, and the light. As soon as I got on the highway, the lights came on or whatever. So like I pulled over, and he comes over. He's like, yeah, you know, like I'm citing you for erratic driving. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, he was like, you know, you crossed the white line in order to merge into traffic. You know how it's like the white solid line and then it breaks into like the dotted line or whatever. I crossed, I guess, a little early is what I allegedly did. And that warranted him like throwing his lights on at like 9 o'clock in the morning. It was like early as hell in the morning and pulling me over. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that's erratic driving.
Right.
Like I'm not
amazing.
swerving. I'm not like doing anything. Like, you know, so I, you know, and then he looks, he goes, what's that? Like, you know, on the floor or whatever. And it was an empty growler, like, and he's like, oh, well, you know, what's that? You know, I was like, it's a growler or whatever. And he's like, oh, well, you know, what's that for? I was like, it's for beer. And he's like, well, you know, is there anything? And I was like, nah, you know. And he's like, well, what about the other one? And I was like, yeah. I mean, it was like, he was like, well, are you drinking? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Drinking a growler while you're driving.
Yeah, like drinking a growler and drive. Like, I mean, I don't know if you know what a growler looks like or the difficulty of drinking out of a jug. Like, I mean, you know, and he's like, oh, well, you know, that's illegal. Da, 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 da. I'm like, bro, like, you're harassing me, man. Yeah. Like, I'm just trying to get home. Like, I just got off. Like, you know, he's like, oh, well, I'm not harassing you. I am going to cite you for, you know, erratic driving or whatever. And he goes back, like, you know, he takes the growlers, goes back to his car or whatever. Another cop car pulls up. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
growlers?
Took the growlers or whatever. Another cop car pulls up. And then, you know, I'm sitting there or whatever, and I'm documenting, and I've got the little ACLU app or whatever. I mean, and you know, he finally comes back or whatever, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna cut you a break, you know, because these look like they're expensive. They're expensive, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, he's like, well, you know, because the one I had gotten from like Trogs, it was like this big, like, you know, it has like the ceramic top and like the metal, you know, whatever, and you know, he's like, well, I'm gonna give these back. He's like, I'm gonna cite you for erratic driving or whatever. I'm gonna need you to step out of the car. And I'm like, oh shit! Like anytime a cop asks you to step out of the car, you don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna get back in this bitch. Like, you know what I mean? But I got out, and he's like, you know, I need you to pour these out. So he made me like pour out the growler or whatever. And it's, you know, and like, you know, he's like, I'm doing like, and he's like, that's a favor, like, you know, like, and it's just
So. That's how craft beer is transported in most cases. So
apparently the law, so technically, and this is a teachable moment in the craft scene or whatever, because a lot of people didn't realize, but yeah, growlers are considered open containers. And he made me like pour them out and then put them in the trunk. Let's be clear, he made me pour them out and then put them in the trunk, not just put them in the trunk. Right. So, you know, there was a nice, you know,
which is where it would have been legally okay to carry in the trunk anyway.
It'd have been legally okay to in a trunk,
but he made it dump out.
But he made it dump it out anyway. So, you know, but again, I mean, there's, I don't know. It'd be one thing if like this happened once in a while or whatever, but like I said, I mean, I've been driving for, you know, half my life. I've lived in Pittsburgh majority of my life, and like, you know, driving around, I never had these issues, these run-in with the police. Like, it just never happened. And in 5 years, like, I mean, I've gotten maybe 2 tickets it was like a parking ticket and then like you know, making a wrong like turn or something, like I got into an accident or whatever and I crossed the line or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, those are very real tickets that I had gotten in like all the years. And in 5 years, I've been cited like 17, 18 times. I currently owe like 3 different magistrates money for like dumb shit, like, you know, parking tickets. And like, I mean, Beaver County, you know, you park is $5, but it's like, it's a $5 ticket or whatever. But it's like, you go to these little like, they ain't got no, they want coins. They want you to have quarters. It's like, are you kidding me, bro? Like, but it's a poor tax. Like,
Right.
I mean, that's at the end of the day what it is. Like, you know, it's not just black; it's a poor tax. Like, if I was driving, like. My fiance owns a Audi. I never get pulled over in an Audi. You know what I mean? She never gets pulled over in an Audi. You know what I mean? Like, it's also a poor thing. I mean, if you have that money to like pay a lawyer or whatever, you can get out of half of these things. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it's not just the racial aspect of it. Again, it's the socio and economic aspect, and they know who's gonna, you know what I mean, fight that, or you know, that could be just an easy ticket that, you know, whatever. And unfortunately, you know what I mean, I'm in that double, like I'm both poor and black, so why not pull this guy over?
Do you ever, I mean, even with everything that's gone on in America with the police and African American community, especially African American males, do you still have people when you say, man, I got pulled over again? Are there still people that say, oh man, what did you do?
Oh, yeah.
There's still that sort of like.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're always going to get the, you know, and that's, and that comes from everywhere. That comes from friends, family, or whatever. Like, hey, what did you do? And don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I am, you know, like, I am a very fiery individual. I can admit, you know, like I've never been a fan of authority. I'm very outspoken and, you know, all this, you know, fight the power mentality or whatever. But I'm also aware of my rights, and that's why I feel like so adamant about doing something and being outspoken or whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, you still get the people that are go, oh, well, what did you do or whatever, and like. That's the system that we're in. We're in a system that teaches us from a very young age that police and the you know, the government and everything else is our friend. And like, you know, if they are coming to, you know, like if they do something to you or whatever, it's because you did something wrong, not because of a failed system, not because, you know, of disproportionate but yeah.
Do you ever all this, as you said, you're kind of fiery. You're not a big fan of authority. Do you consciously make decisions in your mind, though, like you know your rights, but you consciously make the decision in your mind that, like, that there's a chance if I speak up or try and fight for my rights, I could lose my life. So how do you temper that? Like, do you decide, like, or is there a level of how far you'll go at some? You know?
Yeah, I mean, so there is. I mean, you're
it's not just
constantly
a ticket anymore. I mean, it's
whenever I get pulled over, like my heart is beating like out of my chest because again, I don't know if I'm going to die in this situation. Like that's first and foremost. I may die as a result of this, but I mean, honestly, like. I like at the same time, I have a hard time not saying like this is bullshit. You are harassing me. You know what I mean, like, and you know, and that's why that's why I'm so appreciative of this ACLU app, because like if I die in that situation, it'll be recorded that I died in that situation, telling someone that they were violating my rights as a citizen. If I die going out like that, then I mean, and it sucks because I also grew up in the era of like you know hardcore rap and hip hop and like have, you know, read a lot of like, you know, Malcolm X and like, all these like, you know, fiery individuals or whatever. And like, so there is kind of that like, you know, like, oh, fuck it, go out in a blaze of glory type mentality or whatever. But like, you know, like I'd rather go out fighting for my rights than like say on the corner, like selling drugs or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but I mean, there are times where I'm like, you know what, this is, especially, I mean, when it's broad daylight, 9 o'clock in the morning, there's hella like cars. I mean, I try to park whenever I pull over. I try to park in like, you know, places where there's a lot of people like coming by or whatever. So like in that situation, I'm a bit more like, you know, whatever. If I'm get pulled over in West Virginia at fucking 11 o'clock, then I'm all like, hey, officer, how's it going? Oh, yeah, really? Oh, well, all right. You know what I mean? I'm very, you know what I mean? Like, if there's a white person in the passenger seat, I might be a little bit more like, hey, you know, this is bullshit. You know what I mean? And there are so many people, so many friends that I've had like, these police interactions with that like they witness it and they go, holy shit, I had no idea. Like the standard question that I get when I get pulled over is, are there any guns or drugs in the car? Like that's first and foremost. And like the first time like I was on tour with Isaac Cozell and Chris Mohan. We were driving from Lafayette to Atlanta, and we got pulled over. And it just like I got pulled over. It just went from like 55, like from 80 to like 55, like, you know what I mean? So like it was this drastic change or whatever, and it was raining and it was all kind of traffic or whatever, and I missed the sign. I just thought we were still driving 80 or whatever. He pulls us over and like and that's what he was like, any guns or drugs, da da da. And he's looking in, he looks in, he sees like, he sees me, he sees like this skinny hippie looking white dude, he sees an Indian in the back. He's like, what the fuck are these guys? What the fuck is going on here?
Got to be some kind of new gang.
Yeah. I mean, he's asking like all these wild ass questions or whatever. He goes back, and Isaac is like, why the fuck did he was he treating us like that? I was like, isn't that how he treats everybody? Like, he's like, I've never in all my years been asked if I had a gun or drugs in the car. I was like, that's just standard. Like, I got pulled over in Beaver. The first time I got pulled over in Beaver, I was in the car with my fiance, and I was at a light. And I could either make a right to go into this plaza or a left to go into this plaza. And I was in the turning lane to go right. And, it was like late night. It was like maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. We're trying to find a Taco Bell or some shit like that. And she's drunk as shit. I'm the DD. And she's like, oh, my bad. No, it's a left. So I make a left out of the right turning lane. But again, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no other cars anywhere around. Right. The lights come on, behind me. And I'm like, okay. So like, it's a weird, like, a little bit of a road, and then there's a parking lot, but it's the little bit of a road before a parking lot. So I'm like, all right, let me get through this little bit of road and then park into the parking lot and like handle this. I couldn't have driven more than like 100 yards. I stop, and the guy gets out, like the cop gets out, and he's on his like speaker, and he's like, and he has his gun drawn, and he's like, turn your car off, and like, turn the car or whatever, and he's like, roll down your window. I roll down my window or whatever. He's like, put your keys on top of the, on the hood of the car. So I put my keys on the roof of the car or whatever, and he's like, put your hands out, like, so I put my hands out, like, and he walks up and he has his gun drawn or whatever, and he's, and I'm like, I'm sorry, officer, what's going on? He was like, yeah, I thought you were gonna run there or whatever for a moment. I was like, I'm sorry, officer, like, I just parked in the first place that seemed sensible to park, like, and he was like, and then my fiance is like, I'm sorry, officer, I gave him like, bad directions or whatever, and he looks in and sees a white woman in the car, and he immediately goes, oh, you know what, it happens sometimes, that's okay, like, let me just see your license or whatever, and just like, and he takes my license, he goes back 30 seconds maybe, comes back, hey, it's all good, you guys have a good evening. Didn't cite me, didn't like, I've never been like pulled over by a cop by myself and not spent at least 20 minutes pulled over. This dude saw a white girl in the car and was like, there you go. And it's, anytime I see, like, there's white folks in the car, they see it. Like, I got pulled over with Tim Ross. They're like, he was like, can I get your license too? Like, you know what I mean? And Tim was like, oh, but what do you mean? Like, I'm not driving. Like, why do you need my license or whatever? Like, I mean, it's such a, and again, these are the things that, like, yeah, you get people that ask you that question, well, what did you do? Right. Until, like, they're in that situation and they're like, holy shit, I had no idea. You know what I mean? But that's the thing about a lot of the and that's the importance of intersectionality, and that's why it's so hard, because you really, like, experience breeds compassion. So, like, if you don't ever have that experience, then it's hard for you to, like, understand. Like, I don't know what it is to, like, walk back to my car and be afraid at night, like, because somebody might, like, take my butthole. Like, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? But, like, women have to fear that shit all the time. I mean, so, like, it's hard for me to be like, oh, well, like, unless you experience that shit. So, it is. It's while it's frustrating, it's also understandable in the sense that, like, how many people are able to step outside of themselves and put themselves in somebody else's shoes without actually being like, that's a mental exercise. That's a thought process. Like, that's what scholars do. That's what philosophers do. I mean, there's whole schools of thoughts and philosophy built on this. If you don't have any of that, like, how do you do that other than by direct experience? So and
it's become, I don't know if it's become, it's always been easy for someone else to say, like, if a woman, for example, if she's harassed on the street, just verbally, or if she experiences harassment and charges are filed. I mean, I did a story a couple of years ago with a colleague. I mean, then white old judges get these cases and said, oh, all he did was call you baby and refuse to leave your place. What, that's not harassment, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, they refuse. There has to be a willingness to try and at least try to understand. I mean, I can't understand exactly what you're going through, but I understand that you're going through it, and that's horseshit, and we need to do something to figure stuff out.
Yeah. And I think that it's also the, the understanding that, again, like, this is going to come to affect you as well. Like, harassment of women or whatever, like, and it sucks. And people, and like, and it is right. It sucks that, like, men have to feel a connection towards somebody in order to whatever.
Right.
But I mean, again, sometimes that's what it takes. And like, like your mothers, your sisters, your daughters are going to go through these things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, like, and again, like, you can't have the best society that that you strive for unless every citizen there has the ability to feel safe and nurtured in some way to excel. Like, I mean, look at all the great women that make great changes in this country. That all of the scientists, all of the doctors, all of the lawyers, all of the women that have made this country great. Like, imagine how many more women could do that if they didn't feel like they were constantly being like harassed or ignored. Like, these are great minds. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I always like hark to, like, I see these kids in Africa that have no like resources whatsoever, and they're over there like making like battery chargers out of their shoes and shit out of garbage or whatever. Imagine if they had some real opportunity. And I look at that like the same thing of these citizens. Like, look at all these women. Look at all these like the immigrants coming in. Look at all these like black folks that, like, if they had a chance, if they felt like they were being heard and they had the same opportunities as other people, look how great the country could be if you had more voices on an issue. The more minds, the more we're a hive mind. We're a social. Yeah, I mean, like a social animal. The more minds and different points of views that you have on a problem, the quicker you get a solution. I mean, that's just engineering 101. Like one engineer, okay, but 5 engineers, then now it's cool. 5 engineers from 5 different places with 5 different viewpoints. Shit. I mean, what can't we solve?
Yeah, I mean, there's a caravan of minds moving toward this, moving, through Mexico up toward this country, and the first reaction by our president and whomever else is, Jesus Christ, there's a caravan coming. We got to do something. Let's send the military down there.
I mean, it's a caravan of our own making.
Right,
I mean,
sure,
like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
We went down there and fucked shit up, and now they're like, bruh, you fucked shit up. Like, I mean, can we come stay with you? Like, imagine going to somebody's house, burning it down, and being like, how dare you come ask me to sleep on my couch? Like,
get the Holiday Inn.
Yeah, like come the fuck, like, I mean. So I mean, and this is scare tactics, but again, I mean, that's how they stay in power. I mean, that's how that GOP mindset of keep people scared, and that's what when you look at the exit polls or whatever, like, those were the issues. It was immigration, healthcare, the economy, and I forget the fourth one or whatever, but I mean, they were basic. Like, 2 of them were the Republican fears, like, that were, and that's why you see this split. Like, you have the people who are like voting, like, look, man, like, I mean, yes, why are we dying when there's like all these doctors and medications, the richest country in the world, like, and the other half was like, but the immigrants. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing that when I look at sort of at Trump's base, it's. You're just as poor as the rest of us. How is this life? How is this your savior? Other than the fact, he doesn't want Mexicans or blacks or anyone else in this country, and he doesn't think that there should be equality for anyone who's not a white orange male.
Well, I mean, that's that's the thing, though. I mean, like, even back in the day, when you look at, like, when they talk about, like, the Irish were, used to be like slaves or whatever, or immigrants or whatever, which the Irish were never slaves. Like, let's get the shit out of there or whatever. But what you found was that, like, they very early on, rich people really understood that, like, if we split up people on these dumbass lines, then they'll never take us over. So, like, they have this mentality, and they pumped it in. They started, promoting and giving these like little like promotions to, Irish workers and like, Italian workers or whatever, saying, hey, like, oh, here's a little promotion. We're going to pay you a nickel more, like an hour or whatever. Not enough for you to ever be a threat to me. Not enough for you to actually change your life to, like, whatever, but enough that, like, the black people are going to go, man, why do you have that and I don't? And then enough for you to say, because I earned it. Maybe you should like get like me or whatever. I didn't get this because somebody gave it to me or whatever. I got this because I earned it. And you see this mentality of poor white folks where I would rather, like, if I'm poor, if I'm going to be bad, at least I'm not black. You see what I'm saying? So as long as you keep black people down, then yeah, I could be poor, but at least I'm poor and white. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's the thing. And you see the same thing like in the black community. In the black community, we're extremely misogynistic and homophobic. Like the by far the most religious category, like group of people in America, and like I mean, the church is extremely misogynistic and homophobic. And as black men, a lot of black men are like, look, we're getting pounded on, we're getting beat on, or whatever. But as long as I can go home and oppress my woman, then it's cool. At least I have that domain. At least I can exert my power in some way, you know what I mean, over someone or something. And that is one of those things. The gays and the women, you can at least say, well, yeah, I'm fucked up and my life is shit, but it's not as shit as those motherfuckers. And when you do that, again, I look at that the same way. I'm like, man, my life is fucked up, but it's not as fucked up as those people. But my mentality is I want to help those people because I understand how that is affecting me negatively. Whereas that's what I think the short sight is. These people don't understand how keeping other people down affects them. And I mean, of course they don't, because our schools are trash. Yeah,
and you said this before. We were talking a little bit before, and I mean, there's if I correct me if I'm misquoting you, but there's kind of like a very thin line where a lot of African American folks would be Republican, if not because of these kind of core issues. Were it not for were it not for what? Were it for the social issues? Were it for the fact?
Yeah, I mean, if the GOP didn't hate black people, like you know what I mean, weren't so adamantly against, then a lot more black people would vote GOP, because a lot of black people are socially conservative. Like they believe, like, in the woman being, her place in the home or whatever. Like, if you read the Bible, like women are just a rib. They're a spare rib. They're like a rib that we didn't need. Like, and like the teachings are in the Bible that, like, a woman should be subservient. You know what I mean? That, like, she should be like, she shouldn't speak in the church. She shouldn't have a voice. These are things that are actively preached. These are actively preached. You have women that, like, actively are like, that's what when you see the 53% of white women that voted for Trump or whatever, it was like, oh my God, like, why? It's the same thing. Like, it's women that have been indoctrinated and said, hey, that's your place. And that's what they've been told their entire lives. You know what I mean? Like, that's their place. It happens in the white, like, sections. It happens in the Indians, the Asians, like, I mean, the Latinos, like the women in all across America, Muslim countries, all of that, they're all oppressed by their men in some regard. You know what I mean? Some a bit more than others. And yeah, I mean, like, so, and again, same thing with the gay issue. Like, there's so many people that are like, I mean, it's actively preached, like, gay is a sin. But man, like, you still see, I mean, you see these gays for Trump. It's insane. But again, like I said, I mean, when you see those black folks at the Trump rallies, and like you see, like the 12% that voted, in Florida, and the 18% of women that voted in Florida. I mean, when you see those percentage, those are the folks that are voting on the social issues that they align with. It's not the fiscal. It is a very few black people voting for fiscal issues, because majority are poor. If they're voting Republican, they're voting for the social issues. And if it wasn't for the fact that, like, again, the GOP hated black people, I mean, a lot more would vote for those, because, I mean, there's a lot of religious black folks, and that's, I mean, it's sad.
You are listening to the Pittsburgh Current podcast. Charlie Deitch here with Dave Bracey. You can follow Pittsburgh Current on our socials at PGH Current. Thank you, Sork. See, every so often I slip up about the old place. I put that in there. And Dave Bracey is with us. Dave, you want to? Where can they find you on the socials? Especially, I know sometimes you have a shell game on Twitter, so I never know. All of a sudden I get a follow from some, like, who the hell is, like, Tony Martinez? I don't know Tony Martinez. And there it's Dave.
Yeah, I'm Dave Bracey on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm Day Drunk 412 on Twitters, And I have a podcast, Drinking Partners. It's on epicastnetwork.com/Drinking Partners. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, and Spotify under Drinking Partners. And you can find us on IG, Twitter, and Facebook at PartnersPod.
And you can find Day in every issue of the Pittsburgh Current with his day drinking column. Day, how is your liver? I mean, you drink a lot. How's that holding up?
I actually started taking milk thistle and turmeric or whatever. It's it's like an Indian spice or whatever.
Huh.
These are supposed to help with like the regeneration. Like liver is one of the things that can regenerate or whatever, and this is supposed to help stop with the degradation of my liver or whatever. Fingers crossed. I have no fucking idea. But yeah, I mean, my liver is thus far holding up. I also have a daughter, so there's always that little incubation. If I need it, then maybe I get one of hers, a little sliver of hers. Like,
yeah, you don't need much. Just a little piece.
Yeah,
slide it in
little
there.
piece. Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I kept you alive all these
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
Let me get a little chunk of that.
And take care of yourself because I might need a kidney too.
Yeah.
What? Let's talk a little bit about craft beer. And I know you've talked about this a lot. But how did you kind of get into the craft beer scene? I mean, obviously. Again, it was one of those things that, from talking to you before, wasn't one of those things that was exactly welcoming to African Americans like yourself, a community. In fact, we have Day's column every week, and we put it online. And we go in. I usually look in to find a stock photo, and this is a project I want to talk to you about. It's just you go into Adobe Stock and you pick a photo, you put it on there. There's not one black person drinking a craft beer on the entire internet.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is I want us to create the African American craft beer stock photos. I think we can make a lot of money on that, actually.
Man, I mean, Fresh Fest is full of them. So
exactly. But it's just it's really like I don't know if you would call it like an unwelcoming community, but it's definitely and I know it's changed and you've done a lot to change that,
for years we've been marketed malt liquor. So if it was beer, if I go to my bar, if I go to the local distributor or whatever, that's what I'm going to get: malt liquor, and then your domestics or whatever. So our community has this mindset that if you don't like malt liquor, you don't like beer.
Right.
And you also see like. You gotta ask, like, well, why, why aren't there a lot of black people in the craft beer industry? It's systemic racism. I mean, we don't have the same opportunities to, kind of play around with, our time and have the time to learn this craft on top of, raising a family and working 2-3 jobs or whatever. A lot of the craft beer, a lot of the breweries or whatever are in predominantly white neighborhoods. So like if I'm going to have a craft beer, then I need to go into a place where I'm usually going to be the only one there. And if a brewery does open up in my neighborhood, that typically is the first sign that I'm not going to be here for too long.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, cause it's going to be gentrified as hell. I mean, so you have a lot of those factors that go in, and like when the craft beer scene like started to like really like explode over the last 10 to 20 years or whatever, again, like us being the most socially disadvantaged group in America or whatever, like you're talking about a $6 beer, $7 beer or whatever. Like if I'm going out on the weekend, like I don't have if I got $20,
right,
I'm gonna go get whatever's gonna get me most fucked up for that weekend.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like, so I don't have the disposable income to even do that or whatever. But these breweries are opening up. They're bringing in white folks because that's what happens. I mean, you bring in people that look like you, that are around you or whatever, and then those people go, oh shit, this is some great shit. How did you get to talking to brewers, and they're like, yeah, this is how I do it, and then they join these groups, these clubs or whatever, and then it spreads, and then it's a community, and now it's a cultural thing where in white culture, that's a possibility. Hey, owning a brewery is on your radar of things that you could possibly do. There's very few black kids, very few black adults in America that are like, you know what? I might want to open up a brewery. Cause it's not even a beer, brewing, distilling. I mean, we drink it.
Right.
I don't know what our percentage of mass, but we're 20% of the craft consumption. And I mean, we drink tons of Henny. Like, but none of that is coming back to our community. You know what I mean? Like, and none of the people that make that look like us. Like, but we're devoutly loyal to these brands because they're cheap. They get us fucked up through the weekend, and we keep it moving. So, when I got into the industry, it was like I kind of like it. I got out of college. I had a blue moon at a bar. It was like dollar blue moons down at Boonies or whatever on Wednesdays. And I was like, holy shit, like this tastes delicious. I had no idea beer could taste delicious. There's a little orange slice in that bitch. I felt fancy as hell. You know what I mean? Before that it was Corona. Like that's the fancy drink like in the hood back. It was Corona. Like I had a Corona with a little lemon slice. I was balling. Oh, I couldn't wait. Like and even if I only bought one Corona and just held that bitch until like 2 in the morning, like and sipped it slowly, just wanted to make sure people saw me with that Corona. You know what I mean? That was the thing. But like now, so then like, I had the blue moon. I was like, oh, that's dope. And I was drinking those. And then, I stopped at a beer distributor and they had like cases on sale or whatever. And I was like, oh, let me try this variety pack or whatever. It was just as cheap as some of the other cases that I was buying at the time. I don't know what I was getting, but it was on sale and it seemed fancy. Right. And I was like, oh, maybe I can impress some girls with this. Like, so, I got it, and it was a variety pack with from Full Pint, and it had Perky Bust in it, and it tasted like coffee, and I was like, holy shit, like I didn't know beer could taste like coffee. Like it tastes like a bunch of different shit. And it had the White Lightnings in there and like a bunch of different beers. And I was like, oh, so our roommates would do this like thing where we would each buy a case a week and we would try like, different things. And like, I kind of got into that. And then with the podcast, like, after I got into comedy, we were like looking for a different way to get into, get our name out there outside of just being on stage. So we started this podcast and we called it Drinking Partners because comedy is just an excuse for people to drink at bars. I mean, that's really all it is. We were basically hired to keep people there for 3 hours and drinking. So we were like, well, then let's do that. I mean, let's continue that same atmosphere or whatever. And Full Pint, was like one of our first sponsors, sponsored one of our events. And then Brew Gentlemen, I'm from Braddock, and, Brew Gentlemen like invited us down to say, hey, like, come down and like hang out and do a live podcast here. And then from there, they were like, hey, there's these guys Hitchhiker and there's these guys Gristhouse that we just did this freshman cast thing with. You just go hang out with them. And we're like, wait, you mean if we do business with you, we could do business with other people? Like you can't go to Lowe's and they'd be like, we ain't got what you got, but Home Depot right down the street. You know what I mean? Like that whole mentality was like foreign to us. It's like, what the fuck? And like the craft beer, and the scene like was very welcoming. It was like, everywhere we went, they were like, yo, you should go hang out. We would hang out, then we would get, shit-faced and talk about their craft. Like, and afterwards they would be like, hey, here's more opportunity. There's these guys over here, da-da-da. And like, it was such a welcoming environment. And it was like, well, and that's the thing. It took me a while, like, to figure out, like, why? Like, why are we the only ones, like, here or whatever? Yeah. And once we built a platform or whatever, we kind of like wanted to use that to get more black folks in there because again, that it's not so much that the craft beer scene itself isn't welcoming. Like, these guys aren't like, yeah, we don't want you in this bar. Don't get me wrong. There are some out there that, are like that. It's fuck Yingling. But, like there are some folks that are, but for the majority, they're very, inclusive, welcoming folks. But like, you got to look at like their situation. They're business owners. They're just trying to keep their doors open, whatever. They don't have outreach program. Diversity. Like if they open up somewhere in Butler, like where are you going to find black people in Butler? Right. You know what I mean? Like where do you get time to find black people in Butler? Like if you don't have black friends and a bunch of like, if you're not connected to the black community or whatever, how do you even outreach to bring them in? And if you're already doing well, why? Why do that? Why not just talk to the folks that are coming into your doors and saying, what do you like to drink? I'll make that. I mean, so there's, again, it harps back to that intersectionality and that diversity and how, inclusion isn't a charitable act. It makes you better. It makes your industry better. You know what I mean? Like the sciences, like, the evolution. You look at Mesopotamia and the boom of, cradle of civilization, the boom of like, cross-culturalization is what makes us better, even on a genetic level. Right. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. So it's the same thing with the industry. The more minds and the more ideas that you get in there, the better your industry is. So that's where we were kind of like, we were like the bridge and saying, hey, like, we got all these, we got all these brewer friends, and we got all these black friends. Let's, kind of bring them together or whatever.
Was that an easy thing? I mean, you've had Fresh Fest this past summer, which was a great event. It was was it tough to bring those two groups together, those two communities together? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of work. I mean, I guess so it was one of those things where like people kept saying like, well, you should do a beer festival. You should do a beer festival, and it's like, why? Like there are so many goddamn beer festivals. But even that day that we had that beer festival, I think there was like 4 other beer festivals going on that same day. Like, it's like, why? There's no point in doing another beer festival for beer festival's sake. But through years of with this podcast and meeting so many different people in so many different communities or whatever, we felt that there was a need for that. And if it was going to happen, then, who better than us to do that, like to use these connections. So like, it took years of building those connections with breweries and, building that good faith with, business owners and politicians and folks, leaders of the community and like all of that to kind of trust and say, hey, like, we're going to put you together, like your brands, like, we're going to go to Butler Brew Works and, Dr. Hollywood and say, hey, like, do you trust us enough to we're going to put you've never met each other, or you're going to go off of our word, put you guys together. And we think that if you do this thing, something dope will come of it. You know what I mean? So like, building that trust like in the community was pretty difficult. And then like building the actual fest, I mean, it was actually like, so we reached out and we were like, me and Mike and Ed were like, hey, let's do this festival or whatever. We reached out to a few brewers locally, and they were like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? We reached out, the Daves and, of Apis and like, the Hitchhikers and the Voodoos or whatever. And we go, hey, we want to do a black beer festival, right? And when you say that, it's like, you know what kind of reaction you're going to get from folks or whatever. Like, that's not my bag or whatever. And you don't really know how down people are for various causes or how, like, putting that, like, anytime you want to empower an oppressed community, there's going to be the powers that be that go, that's bullshit. Why are you doing that? I don't want to support you anymore. That's racist or that's sexist or that's whatever. You know what I mean? So like, that it's kind of like, stepping out on your brand for that. So we asked them, we didn't know what to expect, but they were on board from the gate. I mean, and we wanted to have a black beer festival here. We wanted to have that representation. We wanted to have black brewers here, but bringing in a bunch of brewers from outside the community and then showing them to a bunch of people within the community isn't going to instill the same type of hope or whatever, because then it's going to be like, oh, well, that's them. Of course you could do that in DC. Of course you can do that in Atlanta. You know what I mean? Like it's more conducive to what it is. How do I do that here? So that's where we brought in the all the brewers. There's no black brewers here, so we brought in all the brewers, the white brewers, and said, hey, let's collab with the people in the black community. Let's have that conversation. That way, like you can teach people, like say, hey, like this is how this is done, da 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 da. They go back to the community and say, hey, did you know that this was an opportunity that was and it's right in our grasp? And I know a guy that can like teach you these things that can like you come down to this spot, it's cool, da da da. In fact, my beer's on tap down there right now. Let's go have one. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And now you have this conversation or whatever. But yeah, when we started, it was about 10 brewers, and then once the word got out, like people kept hitting us up like every week. Hey, can we get on? Hey, can we get on? Like, hey, heard about your festival. I mean, literally, we were adding all the way up until the week of the event. Like Equilibrium from out of New York hit us up. Like I know, like Abjuration and 412 Brewery or whatever came on. Like what I mean, at the end, and then we're like, yo, can you even brew a beer? Like it's like there's only a few weeks before the fest. Like, are you sure you could even brew a beer? Like, because that was a stipulation. Every brewer had to brew a beer. Like, I mean, and it had to be a beer for the festival because it's one thing to just like have bring a couple of kegs and then whatever, but it's another thing, like that's a real investment in the community to have that conversation. That's what we wanted. We wanted to have that conversation and say, hey, like how about like while you're gaining some of these folks, because I mean you get a lot of rap references on labels, where no black people are paid for anything in regard to that. I mean, so it's like, if you're gonna do that, like if you're gonna if because you are gonna prosper, you're gonna profit from this. how about you also empower the people that are helping
Right.
you to do that or whatever? So that's why it was a stipulation, like you have to brew a beer. And when and that's when we were asking people like, yo, are you going to be able to do this? We were surprised at how many people jumped on board to say, hell yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do that. And the beers that came out of it were insane. I mean, you know, you had ice cream and Moscato. You know what I mean? You had the corduroy shorts. Like you had, you know, Cloudy with a chance at mangoes or whatever. You know, with these food and beer pairings and like the only built for purple plates. Like, you know what I mean? And all of the different ideas and you had at the end of that festival, there were so many, not only black people, there were so many women that came out.
Yeah.
Were like, I don't even drink beer. But I found like 4 different beers there that I'll drink.
Right.
Now, because of your inclusion of the black community, because you had a conversation with black women, now you've brewed a beer that black women like. And black women are some fucking loyal, supportive, drinking ass motherfucking
right,
women. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, so like now you built now you have a whole demographic that you're there. And you have a new, like, I don't know if there's ever been Moscato grapes pale ale with vanilla and
Yeah,
I
there's
mean
some great combos.
yeah, that's not like I don't know, but because of that, like, you know what I mean, and that's what we mean when we say, like, you know, diversity isn't a charity. That helps you out, like that helps your industry out. Now you got these new ideas because before everybody was like, well, let's just brew another fucking pale ale, like, yeah, I mean, well, let's make it cloudy this time. You know what I mean? Like, well, let's make it drier this time. Like, but it's the same shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put in some of these new ingredients. Let's infuse some of the ingredients from the black community. I can't wait until next year when we get, you know, maybe some Indian influence.
Right.
You know what I mean, maybe some we got brewers that hit us up from Guatemala and was like, we'd like to be a part of the fest. I want to see what the fuck a Guatemalan brewer brews the fuck up. Like, you know what I mean?
Hey, we're wrapping up with Dave Bracey here on the Pittsburgh Current podcast. 2 things if we can hit quick. First question, a real question, which is, how far do you think Pittsburgh is away from having its own black-owned brewery? Is that?
Well, a year ago, I'd say we were light years away.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, honestly, like after Fresh Fest, so many like people have come out and said, hey, like, you know, I don't brew beer or whatever, but I would invest in a black brewery. And I don't brew beer. I don't have any interest in owning a black brewery whatsoever. Like, you know, not everybody that likes movies wants to act. You know what I mean? So like,
Exactly.
but there is that interest now. Like there are black investors and we're hoping to, you know, cultivate the black youth or even somebody from outside that wants to come in and say, hey, I'm a brewer. Like, you're an investor. Let's do this thing. You know what I mean? Let's do it in the community. Like I said, we had Mayor Marita Garrett on. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, she collaborated or whatever. I'd love to see a black brewery in Wilkinsburg. You know what I mean? Like, because that's the thing. Like, before this festival, we had a conversation with her, and she was saying, like, you know, I don't, like, I'm hesitant to, you know, like, for a brewer coming in because that's gentrification. But I mean, shit, there's this whole push, like everybody's, you know, like, you know, for this push for a black middle class community in Pittsburgh. And there's that push to the hill, there's push to, you know, like the north side, there's push to, you know, whatever. But like in that push, there could be a black brewery that like kind of like is the center of that. The same way Trogs helped build up Hershey the way that it did. You know what I mean? Like you could have a black brewery that is like, all right, you know, now we have a thing that like is black owned. There's black youth and people that want to come in and work there. There's black, you know, employees. There's black patrons. There's a place that we can go to and the dollars are in our community or they're from our community and it's attracting black like young professionals that are coming here to these schools, and that's typically what happens. They come in from DC, New York, Chicago, whatever the fuck, and they get done and they're like, man, fuck this place. Because I mean, when you as a black person, as a black young person, a young professional, as a grad student or whatever, where do you go in Pittsburgh to hang out and have a good time? You go to breweries, they're all white. You go to Southside, you're probably gonna get like, you know what I mean, harassed or whatever.
Right.
You go to the Trap, you're probably gonna get shot. And you go to Savoy, it's all Hasidity, everybody wants to be for show or whatever. So it's like, where is the place where like we can go that like that same environment that white people go to the breweries where they can just have a good time, like just be themselves, like not, you know, or whatever, and enjoy a good craft like environment with some art that like, because I mean, craft brewers are great at, you know, and not like, you know, go broke doing it or whatever. I mean, that's it's one of those environments that we don't have in the community. So I mean, as far off, I mean, shit, I'd like to see one in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Because of Dave Bracey, and I think your Ed Bailey and
Mike Potter. Shout out
Yeah,
to
Mike
Black Food
Potter.
Culture.
Yeah, you guys. I know you guys are working hard toward making that happen. You can see Dave Bracey on the Drinking Partners podcast. You can find him on Dave Bracey on the socials on November 17th. At the Arcade Comedy Theater, Dave Bracey will be performing with Felonious Monk, a Chicago-based comic, very talented Chicago-based comic. Just finally, and of course, you could read him each issue at the Pittsburgh Current. I want to talk about this week's column. I shocked Dave because when you read Dave's column and you get to the end of Dave's column this week, I shocked everybody. In fact, I had people saying, "Did you read Dave's column, or did you just throw it in the paper?" And I'm like, "Of course I read it," And I thought about it, so. It sort of, I'm not sure how we broach it here, but Dave basically used the phrase "dirty dick."
Yeah, dirty dick motherfuckers, man. Like
Yeah.
it was, I actually had people ask, like, because I have like writer friends or whatever, and like
Yeah.
I'll like send them like, hey, did you think this is cool or whatever? And they were like, yeah, I don't know about that last line.
Yeah. So what I do is I evaluate it. I'm like, okay, does it work in this situation? Because I am a proponent of sometimes, fuck you is the only phrase that will work. And so I read it, and then as you came down talking about, performing on stage and the bit, and then you went to that, it fit and it worked. And again, I apparently was the only one other than yourself. I don't even know if you believe that it would get in.
I think
but
it would, yeah.
Anyway, I think that you should start using DDMF after your name. People probably think you're a dentist, not a comedian. But it was so pick up Dave's column this week. It's every week. It's very entertaining, and I appreciate what you're doing for us. It's been great.
I appreciate the platform, especially, and I appreciate what you're doing, like I said, for the free speech and whatnot, and like that opportunity, to get out there. I mean, like when you approached me about the column or whatever, I was like, I mean, I don't know what to write about or whatever, like whatever. And, and I didn't want it to be just a column talking about beer. I wanted to also approach like, some important issues and subjects that were, dear to me. And like, so I've been able to do that with that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it really is about building a community. And I think, honestly, even from the beginning, Dave's columns were good, but you could really see your progression as you've developed your own style on these things. And it's a really great read. So you should pick that up at the Pittsburgh Current. You should watch Drinking Partners podcast, and we will see you here next week for the Pittsburgh Current podcast. New issue of Pittsburgh Current on the streets right now. Pick it up.